CEO's daughter was silent for 6 years. Then she saw a late single mom and said it, Mom, for 6 years, the daughter of one of the most powerful CEOs in the city, hadn't spoken a single word. Doctors couldn't help her. Therapists couldn't reach her. Her father was losing hope. Then one night, in the quiet hallway of a hospital, she saw a woman mopping floors, a struggling single mother working the graveyard shift just to keep her son fed. And in that moment, something impossible happened. The little girl opened her mouth and said one word that would change 4 lives forever. This is their story, and it will break your heart before it heals it. The fluorescent lights of Richmond Medical Center hummed their lonely song at 11:47 p.m., casting long shadows across the polished floors that Maya Rodriguez had just finished mopping. She paused for a moment, pressing her hand against the small of her back, feeling the familiar ache that came from 6 hours of bending, scrubbing, and lifting. At 38 years old, Maya had the kind of beauty that hard work couldn't quite erase, gentle brown eyes that still sparkled with kindness despite the exhaustion, and a smile that could warm a room even when her own heart was heavy. Tonight, like most nights, that heart carried the weight of the world. In her pocket, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out with cleaning solution rough hands and read the text from her neighbor. Mrs. Daria Patterson, Isaiah's asleep. Don't worry. Take your time, baby. Maya whispered a quiet, "Thank you, Jesus," and slipped the phone back into her pocket. 8-year-old Isaiah was her entire world, her reason for breathing, her purpose for pushing due 12-hour shifts that left her body screaming and her spirit tested. She moved to the next hallway, her cartwheels squeaking softly against the linoleum. This floor of the executive administrative wing was always empty at night. Quiet. That's why Maya liked it. Up here, she could think. She could pray. She could remember who she was beyond the uniform and the minimum wage and the eviction notice currently sitting on her kitchen table. You're more than your circumstances, her grandmother used to tell her. God doesn't measure your worth by your bank account, baby girl. Maya needed to remember that now more than ever. The rent was 3 weeks late. Isaiah needed new shoes. His toes were cramping in the old ones, though he never complained, and the medical bills from his asthma attack last month sat in a drawer unopened, because looking at numbers she couldn't pay only made the anxiety worse. But she was grateful. That was the thing people didn't understand about Maya. Despite everything, she was grateful. Grateful for the job, even if it meant working while the rest of the world slept. Grateful for Isaiah's health, even if managing his asthma was expensive. Grateful for the roof over their heads, even if that roof was about to disappear. As she wiped down a window overlooking the city, Maya caught her own reflection. Tired eyes, hair pulled back in a simple bun, the kind of invisible woman society trained itself not to see. "I see you," she whispered to herself. "God sees you." It was these quiet affirmations that kept her going, these moments of speaking life into her own weary soul. Behind her, a door opened. Maya turned, expecting to see a late-working administrator or perhaps security making rounds. Instead, she saw something that made her breath catch. A little girl stood in the hallway. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, wearing pajamas covered in tiny stars and moons. Her hair was dark, silky, and a little messy, as if she'd been tossing in bed. But it was her eyes that struck Maya most, large, dark, and holding an ocean of sadness no child should ever carry. "Hey there, sweetie," Maya said gently, kneeling down despite her aching knees. "Are you lost? Where's your mama or daddy?" The little girl didn't answer. She just stared at Maya with those haunting eyes, one small hand clutching the door frame as if anchoring herself to something solid. Maya glanced at the nameplate on the door, Dr. Jonathan Chen, Chief Executive Officer. "Oh," Maya said softly. "Are you Dr. Chen's daughter? Is your daddy still working?" Still no answer. The child took one tentative step forward, then another, moving toward Maya as if drawn by some invisible force. Maya's maternal instincts kicked in immediately. She could see the child was in some kind of distress, even if she couldn't express it. "It's okay, baby. You're safe. Do you want me to get your daddy for you?" The little girl shook her head. The first communication, even if wordless. "Okay," Maya said, keeping her voice calm and warm. "That's okay. Would you like to sit with me for a minute? I'm just cleaning, but I could use some company." To Maya's surprise, the child walked right up to her and did something completely unexpected. She reached out and touched Maya's face, her small fingers gentle as a butterfly's wings, tracing the curve of Maya's cheek as if memorizing something precious. Maya's heart clenched. There was something deeply broken in this child, something that resonated with Maya's own struggles. Different circumstances, different lives, but suffering recognized suffering. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Maya asked softly. The little girl's lips moved, but no sound came out. Her eyes filled with tears that she blinked back quickly as if she'd learned not to cry. "That's all right," Maya whispered. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to. Sometimes the heart has so much to say, words just aren't big enough to hold it all." The child moved closer, and before Maya knew what was happening, small arms wrapped around her neck in a hug so desperate it nearly broke her heart in two. Maya held her gently, one hand rubbing soothing circles on the little girl's back. "It's okay, baby. Whatever it is, it's going to be okay. You're not alone." She had no idea how prophetic those words would turn out to be, or that this moment, this unexpected encounter between a janitor and a CEO's daughter, would set in motion a series of events that would change all their lives forever. Dr. Jonathan Chen prided himself on control. As the CEO of Richmond Medical Center, he made decisions that affected thousands of lives every day. He commanded respect in every boardroom he entered. He'd built an empire of excellence in healthcare, driven by a mission that had become his entire existence after the accident. But control was an illusion. He'd learned 2 years ago when a drunk driver ran a red light and took his wife Susan from him in an instant. Since that night, his whole world had centered on one thing: his daughter, Lily. And Lily hadn't spoken a single word since the day they buried her mother. Jonathan had tried everything: the best child psychologist in the state, play therapy, art therapy, even experimental treatments. Nothing worked. Lily remained locked in her silence, trapped in a grief so profound that it stole her voice and left her in a world he couldn't reach. He worked late most nights, partly because the hospital needed him, but mostly because the empty hallways of the executive wing were easier to face than the silence of his mansion, where every room echoed with memories of Susan's laughter. Tonight, he'd fallen asleep at his desk reviewing surgical protocols. When he woke, it was nearly midnight, and his first thought was Lily. She slept in the small bedroom adjacent to his office, a space he'd converted so she'd never have to be without him. He'd installed a monitoring system so he could check on her without waking her, a father's attempt to hold on to what little control he had left. But when he checked the monitor, his heart stopped. The bed was empty. Jonathan was on his feet instantly, fear flooding through him like ice water. "Lily," he called out, rushing to her room. The blankets were thrown back. Her favorite stuffed rabbit lay on the pillow. But his daughter was gone. He ran into the hallway, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios. The hospital was secure, but it was also a maze of corridors and departments. She could be anywhere. She could be hurt. She could be scared. Then he heard it. A voice, soft, gentle, coming from down the hall. "Sometimes when I'm scared, I sing to my boy. Would you like me to sing to you?" Jonathan followed the voice and stopped dead in his tracks. There, in the middle of the hallway, was his daughter, and she was being held by a woman in a janitorial uniform, a black woman he'd probably passed 100 times without really seeing, the way people in his position often didn't see the people who cleaned up after them. But Lily saw her. Lily was clinging to this stranger as if she were a lifeline, her small face pressed against the woman's shoulder, her body relaxed in a way Jonathan hadn't seen in 2 years. "Excuse me," he said, his voice sharper than he intended, professionalism masking the fear. "That's my daughter." The woman looked up, and Jonathan saw her eyes widen in surprise and something else: understanding, compassion, not the defensive reaction he'd expected. "Dr. Chen," she said softly, standing carefully while still holding Lily. "I'm sorry. She came out of your office, and she seemed upset, So you thought it was appropriate to put your hands on her?" Jonathan heard himself say, the words coming out cold, defensive. He was scared, and fear made him cruel. He saw the hurt flash across the woman's face, but she didn't fight back. Instead, she gently transferred Lily to his arms, her movements careful and respectful. "I would never hurt a child, sir." she said quietly. She just seemed like she needed somebody. Lily, now in her father's arms, immediately began to struggle, reaching back toward the woman with a desperation that cut Jonathan to his core. The janitor stepped back, creating distance. "I'm Maya, Dr. Chen. I work the night shift. I'm sorry if I overstepped. I'm a mother too." I couldn't just walk past her when she was hurting. Something in those words penetrated Jonathan's defensive walls. He looked at this woman really, looked at her and saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the kind that came from carrying burdens too heavy for one person. He saw the cheap wedding ring she still wore on her right hand, suggesting she was a widow or divorced. He saw the genuine concern in her expression as she watched Lily continue to reach for her, and most troubling of all, he saw his daughter responding to a stranger in ways she hadn't responded to him in years. "Lily," he said softly to his daughter, "it's time to go back to bed, sweetheart." But Lily shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face, her mouth opening in silent sobs that had no voice. Maya took a small step forward. "May I?" she asked, her voice gentle. Every instinct told Jonathan to say no, to protect his daughter from this stranger, to maintain the boundaries between their worlds. But desperation had a way of breaking down walls. He nodded. Maya reached out and took Lily's small hand. "Hey, baby girl, your daddy loves you so much. He's worried about you. Can you be brave for him and go get some rest? I'll be here tomorrow night. I'm here every night, and if you need somebody to sit with while your daddy works, you can come find me. Is that okay?" Lily looked between Maya and her father, and something shifted in her expression. Not quite hope, but not quite despair either. Something in between. A possibility. She squeezed Maya's hand once, then let go, turning into her father's chest and burying her face there. "Thank you," Jonathan said stiffly, not quite sure what he was thanking this woman for, only knowing that something significant had just happened. "She's a beautiful child," Maya said softly. "You're blessed." And then she returned to her cart, to her mop, to her invisible work, leaving Jonathan standing in the hallway, holding his daughter, and wondering what exactly had just occurred. He didn't know it yet, but that moment was the first crack in the walls both of them had built around their hearts. And sometimes, that's all healing needs, just one small crack to let the light in. Maya made it home at 6:15 a.m., her body aching from another long shift, but her mind restless with thoughts of the little girl she'd met. She climbed the 3 flights of stairs to their apartment. The elevator had been broken for 2 months, and found Isaiah already awake, sitting at their small kitchen table with his homework spread out in front of him. "Morning, Mama," he said, looking up with that smile that made everything worthwhile. Isaiah had his father's smile, the one good thing Robert had left them before he decided being a husband and father was too much responsibility and walked away 4 years ago. "Morning, baby boy," Maya said, kissing the top of his head. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep. My chest felt tight." Isaiah touched his sternum, a gesture Maya knew too well. His asthma had been acting up, probably because the apartment's ventilation was poor and mold was growing in the bathroom no matter how much bleach Maya used. She tried to keep the worry off her face. "Did you use your inhaler?" "Yeah, I'm okay now." He smiled again, always trying to protect her from worry, even though that was supposed to be her job. Maya moved to the kitchen, such as it was a corner with a hot plate, a mini fridge that hummed too loudly, and a microwave she'd gotten from a thrift store. She pulled out the last 2 eggs and some bread. Breakfast was going to be simple, but it would be made with love. As she cooked, Isaiah talked about school, about a book he was reading, about his friend Marcus who'd gotten a new bike. He talked about everything except what Maya knew was really bothering him. The fact that the other kids had noticed his 2 small shoes, that he wore the same 3 outfits rotated throughout the week, that he never had money for field trips or class pictures. Children were cruel without meaning to be, and being poor made you visible in all the wrong ways. "Mama," Isaiah said suddenly, his voice changing tone, "there's a letter on the counter. It has red writing on it." Maya's stomach dropped. She knew exactly which letter he meant. She'd been avoiding it for 2 days. "Just some paperwork, baby. Nothing to worry about." But everything was something to worry about. The letter was a final eviction notice. If she didn't come up with $2,400 by the end of the week, Just 5 days away, they'd be on the street. The landlord had been patient, more patient than most, but his patience had limits. Maya served Isaiah his breakfast and watched him eat, her own appetite gone. She'd been doing the math obsessively in her head. Her paycheck was $1,100 every 2 weeks. After this week's check, she'd have maybe $800 left after buying food and Isaiah's medication. She was $1,600 short, with no way to make it up. She'd tried applying for assistance programs, but the waiting lists were months long. She'd tried finding a second job, but who would watch Isaiah? Mrs. Patterson helped out of kindness, but Maya couldn't ask her to do more. She'd tried selling everything of value they owned. The poverty meant there was nothing left to sell. "Mama, you're not eating," Isaiah observed, his young face concerned in ways that broke her heart. "I ate at work, baby," she lied. "I'm fine." After Isaiah left for school, Maya allowed herself 5 minutes to fall apart. She sat on the floor of their tiny bathroom, the only place where she could close a door and be alone, and she cried. Not the gentle tears of frustration, but the deep, body-shaking sobs of a woman who'd tried everything and was watching it all slip away. "God," she whispered into the silence, "I don't know what to do. I've worked so hard. I've done everything right. Please, please show me a way. Not for me. I can survive anything but for Isaiah. He deserves better than this. Please." The bathroom tiles offered no answers. The cracked mirror reflected a woman at the end of her rope, and the eviction notice in the other room sat like a tombstone marking the death of her best efforts. But Maya Rodriguez hadn't survived 38 years of life, single motherhood, poverty, and heartbreak by giving up. So she washed her face, put on a brave expression, and started making calls. She called churches asking about emergency assistance. Full. She called charitable organizations asking about housing help. Waiting lists. She called her sister in Georgia, who she hadn't spoken to in 2 years after a fight about money. No answer. By the time she needed to sleep before her next shift, Maya had exhausted every option she could think of. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, doing that thing she'd done 1,000 times before, choosing hope even when logic offered none. "Tomorrow," she whispered to herself. "Something will change tomorrow." She had no reason to believe it, no evidence to support it. Just faith, the stubborn, unreasonable faith that had carried her this far. What Maya didn't know was that 15 miles across the city, in a mansion with more rooms than people to fill them, Dr. Jonathan Chen was sitting in his daughter's bedroom, watching her sleep and thinking about the janitor who'd held his daughter like she mattered. He was thinking about the way Lily had reached for this stranger. He was thinking about the compassion in the woman's eyes, even when he'd spoken to her harshly. And he was thinking about how sometimes the people who have the least to give offer the most freely. Dr. Jonathan Chen was a man who believed in evidence, in data, in measurable outcomes. But he'd just witnessed something that couldn't be measured in any conventional way. He'd seen his silent daughter respond to human kindness, and that was worth investigating. Both of them, the CEO in his mansion and the janitor in her crumbling apartment, fell asleep that night, not knowing that their lives were about to become impossibly, beautifully entangled in ways that would save them both. The next night, Maya returned to work, carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders but refusing to let it show on her face. She clocked in at 10 p.m., nodded to the security guard, and made her way to the executive floor, half hoping and half reading that she'd see the little girl again. She didn't have to wait long. At 11:30 p.m., as Maya was polishing the handrails in the east corridor, she heard the soft padding of small feet. She turned to find Lily standing there in her star and moon pajamas, holding her stuffed rabbit, those dark eyes fixed on Maya with an intensity that was both heartbreaking and hopeful. "Hey there, little one," Maya said gently, setting down her polishing cloth. "Does your daddy know you're out here?" Lily shook her head, but she didn't run away. Instead, she walked right up to Maya and held out her hand. Maya took the small hand in hers, her heart swelling with emotions she couldn't quite name. "What do you need, sweetheart?" Lily tugged on Maya's hand, pulling her toward a window that overlooked the city. The lights below twinkled like stars fallen to earth, and the moon hung full and bright in the cloudless sky. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Maya whispered. "My boy Isaiah loves looking at the moon. He says it's like God's nightlight, keeping watch over us while we sleep." Lily looked up at Maya, and for the first time, something like a smile played at the corners of her mouth. They stood there together for a long moment, a janitor and a CEO's daughter, two souls finding comfort in each other's presence. Then Maya had an idea. "You know what? I could use some help with my work. Would you like to be my assistant tonight? I bet you're real good at making things shine." The smile grew a little wider. Lily nodded enthusiastically. "All right then, let's get you set up." Maya found a small towel and showed Lily how to polish the lower sections of the handrails while Maya did the higher parts. They worked together in comfortable silence, and something magical happened. Lily began to hum. It wasn't quite singing, just a soft melodic sound that filled the empty hallway with something that felt like hope. Maya's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back and joined in, humming along with whatever tune Lily's heart was creating. They were so absorbed in their work and their wordless song that neither of them noticed Dr. Chen standing at the end of the hallway, watching them with an expression of wonder and confusion. He'd been looking for Lily when he saw her on the security monitor. His first instinct had been, anger this woman, had his daughter out of bed again, had her working like a common laborer. But then he'd seen Lily's face, the contentment there, the peace, the hint of joy he hadn't seen in 2 years. So he'd stopped and simply watched. He watched his daughter, who hadn't responded to countless therapy sessions, helping a janitor clean handrails and humming, actually humming, making sounds that came close to the music she used to fill their house with before Susan died. Dr. Chen. Maya had spotted him. She immediately stood up straight, professional, waiting for the reprimand she probably expected. "I'm sorry, sir." She just appeared, and I thought, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "She's humming," Jonathan interrupted, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes, sir. She hasn't made a sound in 2 years. Maya looked down at Lily, her expression soft. "Sometimes children just need permission to be children again. No pressure, no expectations, just being." Jonathan walked closer, and Lily looked up at her father with those expressive eyes. She held up her towel, showing him the work she'd been doing, seeking his approval. That's really good, sweetheart," he managed to say, his throat tight. Lily beamed, actually beamed. Then she did something that shocked them both. She walked over to Maya, took her hand, and then reached for her father's hand, placing them together as if she was trying to connect them. The three of them stood there, Lily's small hands pressing Maya's and Jonathan's together, and something unspoken passed between the two adults. A recognition, an understanding that this child was teaching them both something important about walls and bridges, about pain and healing. I don't understand what's happening," Jonathan said quietly, not pulling his hand away. "Neither do I," Maya admitted. "But maybe we don't need to understand it. Maybe we just need to trust it." "You're a janitor," Jonathan said, and immediately winced at how that sounded. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "I am a janitor," Maya said with quiet dignity. "And I'm also a mother who knows what it's like to watch her child hurting and not be able to fix it. Job titles don't matter when a child is suffering, Dr. Chen. Only love matters. Only showing up matters." Lily squeezed both their hands, as if emphasizing Maya's point. "What's your name?" Jonathan asked, realizing he'd never properly introduced himself despite their previous encounter. "Maya Rodriguez." "Jonathan Chen." He paused. "Thank you, Maya, for being kind to my daughter, for seeing her when I've been so lost I couldn't find the way to reach her anymore." "You haven't lost your way," Maya said gently. "You're just walking through the dark for a while. But the sun always rises, Dr. Chen, always." From that night forward, an unlikely routine developed. Lily would spend part of Maya's shift with her, helping in small ways, humming, and occasionally holding Maya's hand. Jonathan would join them sometimes, watching his daughter come back to life in 5-minute increments. Neither adult spoke about what was happening. Neither wanted to jinx it by naming it, but both knew they were witnessing something miraculous, and neither realized that the real miracle was still to come. 3 weeks passed, 3 weeks of Lily slowly opening up, of humming that sometimes became whispered words Maya could almost hear, of a CEO and a janitor forming a friendship neither expected. But 3 weeks wasn't long enough to solve Maya's mounting crisis. The eviction notice deadline had come and gone. Maya had managed to negotiate one more week, one final chance, but she was still $1,600 short. She'd picked up every extra shift available, but it wasn't enough. Nothing was enough. She hadn't told Jonathan about her situation. How could she? He lived in a different world, one where problems were solved with a single phone call or the stroke of a pen. He wouldn't understand the kind of poverty that made you choose between your child's medicine and keeping a roof over his head. On the night everything changed, Maya clocked in for her shift with a heavy heart. Tomorrow was the final deadline. Tomorrow, they'd be homeless. She'd already started packing their few belongings, trying to figure out where she and Isaiah could go. A shelter, maybe. Mrs. Patterson's couch for a few days if she was lucky. But at 11:47 p.m., her phone rang. It was Mrs. Patterson, and there was panic in her voice. "Maya, honey, you need to come home. It's Isaiah. He's having a real bad asthma attack, and his inhaler isn't working. I've called 911, but Maya didn't hear the rest. She dropped her cleaning supplies and ran. She didn't clock out, didn't tell anyone she was leaving, didn't think about consequences or job security. There was only one thought in her mind, Isaiah." She burst through the apartment door to find Mrs. Patterson holding Isaiah, whose lips had a terrifying blue tint, his chest heaving with the effort of trying to breathe. "Baby, Mama's here," Maya said, taking her son in her arms. "Hold on, baby. Hold on." The ambulance seemed to take forever, but it was probably only 6 minutes. 6 minutes of Maya praying harder than she'd ever prayed, of Mrs. Maya Patterson reciting the 23rd Psalm, of Isaiah fighting for every breath. When the paramedics arrived, they worked quickly, putting an oxygen mask on Isaiah and loading him onto a stretcher. Maya climbed into the ambulance, holding her son's hand, whispering promises she hoped God would help her keep. "You're going to be fine, baby. Mama's not going anywhere. You're going to be just fine." They took him to Richmond Medical Center. Of all the hospitals in the city, they brought him to the one place where Maya's two worlds collided. In the emergency room, doctors and nurses swarmed around Isaiah, their movements efficient and practiced. Maya stood back out of the way, feeling helpless and terrified. This was her worst nightmare, watching her child suffer and being powerless to stop it. A doctor she didn't recognize came over. "Are you the mother?" "Yes. Yes, I'm Maya Rodriguez. That's my son, Isaiah. He has asthma, but it's never been this bad. Please, you have to. We're doing everything we can," the doctor said kindly but professionally. "Does he have insurance?" Maya's heart sank. "No. No, I lost my insurance when I lost my previous job. I've been trying to get him on the state program, but the paperwork is, I'll pay, however much it costs. I'll find a way to pay." Even as she said it, she knew it was an impossible promise. She couldn't even pay rent. How could she pay for an ER visit, possible hospital admission, medications? But she'd figure it out later. Right now, all that mattered was Isaiah breathing. "Mama." Isaiah's weak voice cut through her panic. She rushed to his side, taking his hand. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here. I'm sorry," he whispered through the oxygen mask. "I'm sorry for being sick and costing money." Maya's heart shattered. "Oh, baby, no. Don't you ever apologize for being sick. You are worth more than all the money in the world. You are my treasure, Isaiah, my greatest blessing." "But the papers with red letters, don't you worry about those papers. God's going to work it out. He always does." Even as she said it, she wondered if she still believed it, if faith could survive this much pressure. Behind her, someone cleared their throat. Maya turned to find Jonathan Shen standing there, still in his suit despite the late hour. Beside him, holding his hand, was Lily in her pajamas. They must have been upstairs when Isaiah was brought in. "Maya," Jonathan said, his voice gentle, "Mrs. Patterson called my office. Security gave her my number because she knew you worked here and didn't know how else to reach you." "Dr. Chen, I'm so sorry. I left my shift without permission. I know that's grounds for termination, but please, I can't explain." "Maya, stop." He stepped closer. "I don't care about the shift. I care about your son. Is he going to be okay?" The kindness in his voice broke something open in Maya. All the strength she'd been holding together suddenly crumbled and tears poured down her face. "I don't know," she whispered. I don't know, and I can't pay for the treatment, and we're being evicted tomorrow. And I've tried so hard, Dr. Chen. I've tried so hard to do everything right, but it's all falling apart, and I don't." She couldn't finish. The sobs took over. Lily pulled away from her father and wrapped her small arms around Maya's waist, hugging her tight. And then Lily spoke, actually spoke, real words, clear as a bell, after 2 years of silence. "Don't cry, Miss Maya. Angels are here." The entire emergency room seemed to stop. Jonathan froze, his eyes wide with shock and hope. The nurses nearby turned to stare. Even Isaiah, in his hospital bed, looked over with surprise. "Lily?" Jonathan whispered. "Lily, did you just—" Lily looked up at her father and smiled. "Yes, Daddy. I'm ready to talk now, because Miss Maya taught me it's okay to be scared and sad, but we don't have to be quiet about it. We can ask for help." And then she looked at her father with a wisdom far beyond her 6 years. "Miss Maya needs help, Daddy. She helped me. Now we help her." Isaiah recovered. Within 2 hours of treatment, his oxygen levels stabilized, his breathing eased, and the terrifying blue tint faded from his lips. The doctors wanted to keep him overnight for observation, but they were confident he'd be fine. What happened in the hours that followed would be something Maya would remember for the rest of her life as the moment everything changed. Dr. Sixtrees, Jonathan Chen, didn't just arrange for Isaiah's medical bills to be covered through the hospital's charity program, something Maya didn't even know existed. He didn't just extend her employment despite her leaving without permission. He sat with her in Isaiah's hospital room at 3 a.m. and asked her to tell him her story. So she did. All of it. The husband who left, the jobs she'd worked, the apartments they'd lost and found, the constant struggle to choose between dignity and survival, the eviction notice, the impossible math of poverty that never quite added up no matter how hard she worked. She told him about the shame of being invisible, of being the woman people looked through rather than at, of working herself to exhaustion and still falling short. And Jonathan listened, really listened, not with pity, but with respect. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "For 2 years, I've had access to the best therapists in the country. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to help my daughter, and none of it worked. Do you know why?" Maya shook her head. "Because I was trying to fix her instead of seeing her. I was so focused on the problem that I forgot to just be present with her pain. I was trying to buy a solution when what she needed was someone to sit in the dark with her until she was ready for light." He looked at Lily, who had fallen asleep in a chair with her stuffed rabbit. "You gave her that. A janitor working for minimum wage, gave my daughter something I, with all my money and power, couldn't provide. You gave her permission to be broken, to be scared, to be silent if she needed to be, and in doing that, you gave her permission to heal." "I just saw a child who needed kindness," Maya said softly. "Exactly, you saw her. When's the last time someone really saw you, Maya?" The question landed like a blow. When was the last time someone had really seen her? Seen past the uniform and the circumstances to the woman underneath? The woman who dreamed and hoped and fought and loved. "I see you now," Jonathan said, "and here's what I see. A woman of extraordinary character, strength, and grace. A woman who's been fighting a battle no one should have to fight alone. And I'd like to help, if you'll let me." "Dr. Mondon, Chen, Jonathan, please." "Jonathan," Maya corrected. "I can't accept charity. I've been poor my whole life, but I've never been without pride. I work for what I have. I know, which is why I'm not offering charity." He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "I'm offering you a job. Director of Patient Family Services. It's a new position I've been wanting to create. Someone to oversee family support programs, to advocate for patients and families who fall through the cracks of the system. Someone who understands what it's like to navigate healthcare while poor." Maya stared at the card. "I don't have a degree. I don't have qualifications for." "You have lived experience. You have compassion. You have the exact perspective this hospital needs. The salary is $65,000 a year, with full benefits including health insurance for you and Isaiah." Maya couldn't speak. That was more money than she'd made in 2 years combined. "And," Jonathan continued, There's an apartment building the hospital owns for staff housing. 3 blocks from here. 2 bedrooms. If you want it, it's yours at a subsidized rate you can actually afford. Why? Maya whispered. Why would you do this for me? Because you saved my daughter, Jonathan said simply. Because you reminded me what it means to be human. Because somewhere along the way, I forgot that healing isn't just about medicine and procedures. It's about seeing people. All people. The way you saw Lily. The way you see everyone, regardless of whether they can pay you for the privilege. Lily stirred in her sleep and murmured, Miss Maya stays. Both adults smiled through their tears. Besides, Jonathan added, I have a feeling Lily's going to need you around. She's talking now, but she's going to need support as she processes her grief. And selfishly, I'm going to need someone to teach me how to be present with her instead of just trying to fix everything. I'm just a janitor, Maya said, still unable to fully believe this was happening. You're not just anything, Jonathan said firmly. You're a mother, a survivor, a woman of faith and dignity and strength, and you're going to help transform how this hospital serves its most vulnerable patients. As the sun rose over the city that morning, painting the hospital room in shades of gold and pink, Maya sat beside her sleeping son and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, solid, grounded hope. Not the desperate hope of someone hanging on by their fingernails, but the hope of someone who'd walked through the fire and found that even in the darkest valley, angels appear. Sometimes those angels wear business suits. Sometimes they wear pajamas with stars and moons. Sometimes they come in the form of a child's first words after years of silence. And sometimes, Maya realized, we become angels for each other without even knowing it. We show up in our brokenness and our struggle, and somehow that brokenness becomes the bridge that connects one human heart to another. Isaiah woke up to find his mother smiling, really smiling, for the first time in longer than he could remember. Mama, why are you crying and smiling at the same time? Because, baby, Maya said, pulling him into a gentle hug. Sometimes miracles don't look the way we expect them to. Sometimes they look like the worst night of your life turning into the best morning. I don't understand. You will, sweetheart, you will. And he did. 6 months later, Maya Rodriguez stood in her new office at Richmond Medical Center, looking at the wall of thank you letters from families she'd helped navigate the overwhelming healthcare system. Isaiah's asthma was under control with proper medication and regular doctor visits, both covered by insurance. They lived in a safe apartment where the heat worked, and the elevator ran, and Isaiah had his own bedroom. But the greatest miracle wasn't the financial stability, as life-changing as that was. The greatest miracle was the family they'd found. Lily Chen spent at least one afternoon a week at Maya and Isaiah's apartment, playing with Isaiah, helping Maya cook dinner, and slowly learning that it was okay to love new people without forgetting the mother she'd lost. Jonathan had become not just Maya's employer, but her friend. Someone she could talk to about single parenthood, about grief, about the challenge of holding on to hope when life felt impossible. They'd become a patchwork family, stitched together not by blood but by the threads of shared struggle, mutual respect, and the choice to see each other's humanity. Maya often thought back to that night when she'd been mopping floors and a silent child had reached for her hand. She'd had nothing to offer that child except presence, kindness, and the understanding that sometimes we just need someone to sit in the dark with us. It turned out that was everything. The lesson, true wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in kindness given and received. It's measured in the courage to keep showing up, keep hoping, keep choosing compassion even when life is hardest. The people we least expect often become the angels who save us. And sometimes, without even realizing it, we become the angels who save them. Your circumstances don't define your worth. Your character does. Your kindness does. Your refusal to let hardship steal your humanity does. And when you're in your darkest valley, when you can't see any way forward, remember Maya. Remember that she kept going when logic said to give up. Remember that she chose hope when fear offered easier options. Remember that her willingness to see a suffering child, despite having nothing material to give, changed 4 lives forever. We're all just walking each other home. Sometimes you'll be the one who needs help. Sometimes you'll be the one who gives it. Both are equally important. Both are equally sacred, so be kind. Show up. See people really see them. and trust that even when you can't see the way forward, even when the math doesn't add up and the odds are stacked against you, miracles are still possible. They happen every day in hospital hallways and humble apartments, in the moments when one human being chooses to reach across the divide and hold another's hand. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own struggles or gave you hope for your own miracle, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to this channel for more stories that celebrate the resilience of the human spirit. Leave a comment below telling us about a time when a stranger's kindness changed your life, or when you were able to be that stranger for someone else. Remember, you are seen. You are valued. Your struggle is valid, and your story matters. Keep hoping. Keep showing up. Keep being the light. God bless you all.